On today's episode, we're talking with Jim Kaskade, CEO of Conversica, about how to grow revenue and improve customer experience by adding intelligent virtual assistants to your sales and marketing team. Welcome to the Productive AI podcast, where we aim to simplify AI and make it more accessible to business leaders. I'm your host, Troy Angredon. If you're running a marketing and a sales team, you know that sometimes you get more leads than you can qualify, or marketing is handing off some leads that are perhaps not qualified, or they hand them to the sales team and the sales team can't really handle that volume of inbound leads. There are many, many different ways that the marketing to sales handoff can be suboptimal. And so in this conversation, we're going to talk about how to improve that process. I have Jim Kaskade here. Jim has had quite a career. He started as an engineer and ultimately became a vice president and a GM of a number of different business units, as well as an executive in residence at a private equity firm. He's been a CEO. He's been a mentor, and working across a number of different great organizations like Xerox PARC, CSC, the Founders Institute, and now Conversica. Jim, thanks for your time and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Troy. Great to be here.
So when you and I talked about this, Jim, what you guys are doing at Conversica, I was really impressed by kind of the way you looked at the issues that you find in most marketing and sales teams, kind of the standard challenges, setting aside things like AI and chatbots, just the general issues that any conversational AI systems or even automation systems were sort of addressing. Can you just talk about that to
Yeah,
start?
absolutely. Yeah, thank you. A lot of companies, no matter what size you are, I guess it gets probably even worse as you get larger. But the alignment between marketing and sales is a historic, issue. And I think hey, I'm the salesperson. I'm not getting fed enough to keep my sales team, properly meeting their quotas or exceeding their quotas, and the marketing team is basically feeding a lot of potential opportunities and feeling like the sales team's not doing their job. And so you get this kind of pointing fingers, in both directions. And I think the challenge there obviously is significant. It starts from the head of the funnel and all the way to well past the actual transaction of bringing on new customers, because sales gets re-engaged sometimes to expand opportunities with existing customers. So that alignment, that sales and marketing alignment, is where I think there's huge upside, huge opportunity.
And for somebody who maybe is not involved day to day in kind of the marketing and sales functions, doesn't really understand kind of what the marketing folks are doing, what the SDR or sales development representatives are doing, or the inside sales folks are doing, can you just kind of explain that a little bit for folks who maybe are not that familiar with that sort of pipeline, I guess?
Sure. So you're even more so today with the pandemic. You're trying to service an online customer base who wants a phenomenal experience engaging with your brand, from the beginning. So your marketing teams will spend a lot of money bringing in, opportunities to the website, through, virtual events and webinars. And the dollars they spend there are supposed to drive, opportunities in the sales hands. But what's happening for a number of reasons is that, for every dollar you're spending on marketing, you're probably getting about 30 cents of value. And the reason for that is, you'll generate a number of leads, and the folks that are following up on those opportunities may not have the capacity to do so. So there's some that fall between the cracks. If you're lucky and you've got the capacity, maybe you don't follow up on them in a timely fashion. So within minutes sometimes makes an order of magnitude difference than hours or days or sometimes weeks. And then there are situations where, because that role that you have for following up on marketing leads is one where you're typically seeing a lot of churn. A lot of folks will come into the business and spend some time with you, on average about a year, and then you have a new person back in that seat and you're training them. And they don't always have the consistency, because of that fact that they're always new. And in many cases, they're moving from, trying to follow up that lead maybe one or two times, and then they move on to the next lead. where you might have to spend 10, 20 times following up on a lead before the timing is right. So for all those reasons, lead follow-up is really not done well. And then on the flip side, when the salesperson does get that lead from marketing, you have a sales development rep who's now trying to qualify that. They have to go through a process, and many methodologies are used, like BANT or ANAM, to methodically go through, a systematic approach to saying, is this person ready to talk to my high cost resource, my salesperson, whether they're inside or even costly, or they're field salespeople. And I think when you're going through that process, you have the same issues in terms of the cherry picking leads, not following up on them enough. Your sales folks are trained to go through a certain process, but again, that training sometimes doesn't stick. And of course, not every salesperson is the same. And so I think when we look at that, we look for opportunities to automate, right? Obviously, using marketing automation solutions, sales development automation solutions, even CRM automation solutions, and all those applications, those tools, those SaaS providers, such as the Marketos, such as the Outreach IOs, such as the Salesforce Sales Cloud. All of those solutions are very useful in trying to create a process that works. But there's still a lot to be had there in terms of further automation, and helping those teams get from an unqualified marketing lead to a marketing qualified lead to a sales accepted lead to a sales qualified opportunity, or sales qualified lead.
Yeah, having operated inside sales teams, I've seen both in the ones that I've been involved in and the ones I've consulted to, exactly all of the issues you've just talked about, where definitely it starts with the finger pointing of marketing is not doing their job and not handing off the right qualified leads. And marketing says, hey, we're sending you all these leads and you guys are letting them age out. They're just not getting responses, or they're getting a response 2 weeks later. You're cherry picking, as you said. I've seen that over and over and over again. And yet, we have more than 8,000 marketing programs out there that people can use as SaaS offerings. Who knows how many sales programs? What's the gap? What's the issue? I mean, we have all these tools. What's the thing that's missing here?
Well, I think the key issue is the folks that we're engaged with from the sales side, they don't have the perfect level of capacity that they need when they're doing a good job of becoming more digitally enabled, and your enterprise has gone through a digital transformation where they are engaging the end customer prospects through multiple channels, whether that be through social, web, or what have you. That digital success, then is challenged with an internal team that's really not necessarily set up properly, whether it's culturally or just organizationally, to follow up. And so, good example would be, I go to a high traffic digital property, a website, and I put a chat function on it, and I get, instead of my typical sales team may engage thousands of opportunities, now there's millions. And so there's tons of folks coming through a web interface, and now we're inundated. And so when you're intelligently routing these opportunities from these digital touch points to the human's overwhelmed. So which ones do you pick? Which ones do you follow up on? Becomes, I think, a challenge that's just too overwhelming. And so as you enable these digital touch successes, you have to buffer somehow, between the human workforce and this digital successful touch with something digital in between. And I think that's where AI and automation come together. And I think digital can address digital, right? So other issues are just back to being good at what you do. So if a salesperson, inside sales development rep, is well trained, how do you scale that? And so, making sure you take the best practices of your sales process and embodying that goes beyond the marketing sales automation solutions, because they don't necessarily completely capture your business best practices in sales into those solutions. And so how do you get the best version of your sales development rep, or the best version of your inside sales or your field sales teams embodied in this kind of digital domain? I think that's the big question, right? So how do you apply AI to solving that problem?
Right. So we've ended up building. So yes, there's a lot of marketing and sales automation, but the net of it is that all that's done is create a flood of inbound that now we can't filter, because we're having automation bring everybody into the net or into the top of the funnel, basically. And then we're having humans say, I give up. I've got too much data to sift through and sort through. I can't prioritize. I'm just going to go through and pick what I think is high value. I'm just going to let the rest go by.
Yeah. So all the
Which is just
potential,
waste.
yeah, great potential falls between your fingers.
Right.
And again, your marketing spend and your sales investments are not optimized.
Right.
And I think this is the storyline for the digitally successful enabled, right? So we're talking about companies that have made an entree into this digital world. We can't really speak to those that haven't quite gotten there, right? They're
Sure.
they're
They
going to
don't
have
have this problem.
they don't have this problem of feeding their sales teams with all this digital opportunity, so they don't become as
Right.
much of an opportunity for AI and automation, intelligent automation, generally speaking.
Which is actually kind of funny. So if you haven't automated your marketing and sales, you probably don't have this problem. And if you have automated your marketing and sales, you've now created a problem that you need more automation to address.
Correct. And
Yeah.
it's just like automation 1.0 to automation 2.0 to 3.0. And I
Right.
think there's been a ton of success in intelligent automation in the back office. I think there's been a focus on, when you go through a financial transformation, how do I, add additional automation? Even in the sales operations, there's automation work that's being done, HR, et cetera, engineering, distribution, assembly, all of those things. Been thinking about how to automate, and I think there's great successes in intelligent automation in the back office. Companies like UiPath or Automation Anywhere that have done a phenomenal job, looking at how to take disparate processes, codify them, and then centrally manage them, using code, using software, and boom, that's billions of dollars of value unlocked. So now the question is, how do you do more in the front office? In the parts of the business that are engaged with the end consumer. And I think when the end consumer enters into the life cycle with your brand, with you, it starts with marketing, moves into sales, goes into customer success, and it can even start to touch finance, but again in a customer facing way. And so I think of that as even more opportunity to unlock, because if you think about the billions of dollars of value in the back office that's not even touching the customer, the front office is creating revenue. It's touching the customer. And so if you can unlock even more through intelligent automation in the front office, wow, that's impacting the top line, not
Right. I was
just
going
the
to say
bottom line.
the back office is really optimizing for cost, and the front office is really optimizing for growing revenue. And there's
Absolutely.
been so much of a huge focus in the sort of RPA or robotic process automation space. Two of the players you mentioned, they're booming. They've got all sorts of funding. They've got a huge momentum in the market, working on solving and automating those back office processes and stitching together all of those systems. Actually, will be. I'm not sure of the sequence of the podcast, but Tom Tolley came on and we were talking about that. He wrote the Robotic Process Automation Handbook. We're going to do a whole episode on that, actually. So, okay, so let's talk about kind of how you start to solve this problem with AI. Now, you already touched on something that I think all of us are probably already a little experienced with. You go to a website, you download, let's say, a PDF or something, and then there's some kind of chat bot there. You know it's not a human, but pops up and says, "How can we help you today?" And if you type something in, it's generally useless. So are we talking about that, or are we talking about a next generation? Because you and I sort of talked about this kind of spectrum of value of chatbots. I think maybe talking about that would be really helpful.
Yeah. I think my first comment would be is, think back when you had the paperclip for Microsoft, giving you the little notification of things that you need to pay attention to. You know,
Clippy the paperclip, right?
Clippy the paperclip. I think of chatbots as obviously so much more value than that in terms of giving you at least an interface where in real time, as a potential customer or an existing customer with an issue, that you can you can literally ask a few questions and you can get quickly routed to the right business function. And so rather than picking up the phone and looking at customer support or sales, you can get an interface to somebody through an online experience that can meet your needs. Now, I think that's hugely useful, with the caveats that you have an organization that can actually service that potential volume problem. But what we are definitely talking about is much more of a level of sophistication. And so, what you evolve to wanting as a digitally enabled consumer, is, or digitally native or converted to a digitally native consumer, is you want to have an exchange. You want to have a real time digital exchange. You don't want to be routed to somebody who then you pick up the phone or you get into an email that's maybe lengthy and not real time. What you want is to have a natural exchange in the moment, where it's bidirectional. It's not just let me ask you questions and route you. It's let me ask you a question and then give you information and make sure you've got your answers to the questions that you had. And that natural back and forth becomes the intelligent kind of virtual assistant experience. And I think virtual assistants, they were born into use cases like IT help desks for employees. They were born into use cases like FAQ, frequently answered question use cases for support. But where it has evolved to being a much more tougher, kind of technology solution is around that exchange with a prospect buyer. Somebody who naturally is trying to learn about your products and doesn't maybe know where they need to go in getting potentially given a solution from your company. So the exchange between you and the prospect customer or existing customer that wants to expand the business has to be much more dynamic, and the information's not canned. It's specific to you as the customer. It's not like, here's the product, I have an issue. Oh, there's thousands of other people that have had this issue. Here's the knowledge base answer to that. That's simple, right? That's extremely simple, chatbot kind of FAQ type of response. But if I'm like, I'm Jim Kaskade and I'm trying to shop for a certain product for my wife for a 50th birthday, I don't quite know where I need to go with this. I need to have a natural kind of human-like exchange to figure out what my needs are and what the potential product that suits my needs must be. And I think that's where the intelligent virtual assistants kind of start on their journey, and become much more customized to what it is that I need as a prospect buyer. And then maybe my back and forth exchange, will happen over not just the current conversation, but multiple conversations. Could happen over days, weeks, could even be months. We've seen use cases where we've had dialogues with people over a year before they've made a purchase. And so you have to have a customized exchange, but it has to be very contextual. It has to be, well, hey, Jim, last time we spoke, we were talking about this. And so there has to be, kind of a continuous understanding of how the conversation has evolved, based on the history, and then ultimately personalizing the continued conversation based on the historic, trend, exchanges that you've had. And that's hard to do. That's not a back office process automation. That's not even comes close to the kind of chat bot type of experiences that everybody has, come to know.
It seems hard to believe. So I guess the first question I think most people listening to this would have is, wow, that sounds really great, Jim, but I've never seen it. I've gone to these websites, I've asked a question, and it's done exactly what you've said. It said, here are our top 3 knowledge base articles. And you're like, no, I'm trying to buy something from you. I don't want your support article or something like that. Or their other experiences, they're using, Google or Android or Alexa or something like that. And so they're having this kind of very single domain, single task request response. What is the weather today? What is the, whatever the question is. What you're describing sounds like something from the movie Her, where you're having this and you're engaging with something in multiple conversations over multiple weeks or months. Is that available today, or is that something that's sort of aspirational?
No, that's available today. And I think the beautiful thing about technology, especially here in Silicon Valley, is there's been some phenomenal innovation around cloud-based analytics, and cloud-based, you know, just we'll call it machine learning, deep learning capabilities, right? I think the artificial intelligence, the AI in this decade of 2020 is, I don't want to say as good as dirt. I don't want to say it's old tech, but the breakthroughs that are required have been made, and now it's a function of applying them. Whether you've decided to use Microsoft Azure or Google Compute Cloud or Amazon Web Services, the technology required to do this is here. And so many firms have taken the basics of natural language understanding to properly interpret you and take what you're saying or what you're typing or what you're texting and quickly be able to assess what is it that raw data set really means. And then once you understand that, you know, determining what the next best action is. And decisioning is, highly advanced. Taking, human behaviors and understanding, you've got this intent or a number of intentions as a prospect buyer. Coupling that with the next best action is not, rocket science. And then beyond that, if you're having a conversation, so obviously the AI needs to talk to you as if it's human-like and it's trusted and the exchange feels natural. That natural language generation is, again, very well developed. And I think, again, because of the innovations with machine learning, deep learning, as well as cloud-based, architectures, that combination is there. So how do you wrap that all together and package it in a way that can be deployed and implemented or applied is truly, I think, the hard part. The applied science to me is harder than the science itself or the AI technologies themselves. And I think that comes with a lot of trial and error, that's evolved over, almost, I think for us in our company, it's been since 2007. So we're talking 13 years, of really trying to understand how to apply technology and get it into, use cases that are meaningful, and then the best practices around those use cases.
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes on that whole issue is it's, sure, the AI element or module that is at the heart of the product that you're building, yes, that's important. But as you say, there's been this huge explosion of platforms and services available, right? Whether it's Azure Cognitive or Google ML or AI services or Amazon, of course. And so those things will race to the bottom in terms of just being able to call those functions and embed them into your products. But what really counts, I think, in any of these things, as we get into this kind of era of, as Dr. Kai-Fu Lee would say, this sort of era of business AI, is really the rest of the product around that AI engine, in this case, around natural language processing. So that gets into what's the interface? What's the user experience? And I think one of the things you and I talked about, which would be interesting to hear more on, is how do you take a product like this? You've got this really complex natural language understanding engine and kind of intent recognition system. How do you get that installed in a customer? Because traditionally, AI is kind of a big science project. It's very expensive. You got a bunch of data scientists, machine learning engineers, and you're sort of, wandering through the swamp trying to build a project. This is different. They're buying a product from you. How do they actually ingest that? How do they integrate it into the rest of their IT?
Yeah, and that is the biggest issue. When I was running a very large line of business, we did a ton of digital transformation projects, about 1,000 per year, driving about $1 billion of value. And the biggest issue that we saw was not coming up with how to create digital innovation. It was how to operationalize it. And so if you go to a big brand and you say, I've got this great platform, it's an open platform, it's based on conversational AI. It could be the open AI, it could be the Rasa, it could be the blenders of the world. And here you go. Now you've got this toolbox and you've got to build your house. And so that's not easy. And you've got proprietary platforms that try to put more around that, whether that's, IBM solution with Watson, they'll throw a lot of great thinkers to help you customize it, and a ton of companies like Nuance, LivePerson, et cetera, that will package, but it's still a platform. And I think when you're providing platforms to clients, there's a lot of work to customize. From our perspective, I think, again, to truly to make this something that is easily implemented, easily adopted, you have to be able to incorporate it into a business process without changing the business process. And you have to make it such that you're not sitting there trying to figure out, the details of the AI or the machine learning or the deep learning. So it's got to be made simple. And so from our perspective, my experience, where we are at Conversica, is we need to give them applications. And applications is not a platform. It is the product of configuring the platform. And ultimately, an application could be a virtual assistant that's very specific to a role or function. Whether it's a marketing assistant or whether it's a sales assistant or a customer success assistant or even a finance assistant. And that application then out of the box is implemented fairly straightforward. We're talking hours in the sense that it integrates with your back-end system of record. That could be your Salesforce CRM, could be your marketing automation Marketo. Whatever that system of record is, you just integrate with that. And then out of the box comes the functions. And so think about the virtual assistant just like you would a team member. I have a team of people in my marketing department. I have a team of people in my sales development group, my sales team. And I'm now going to add a digital team member. And that digital team member is going to use the same SaaS software solution that the rest of the team uses. And now that digital team member comes with kind of best practice conversations for that function. And so what's left is, well, I want to tailor some of those functions based on tailoring the conversations specific to my business. So some of the conversation, out of the box conversation packages, call them libraries of conversations or libraries of skill sets, is a hierarchy above that. I'm given as a client to simply tailor to my products or services. And then you can implement so much more quickly. You don't have to worry about the fundamentals of the machine learning, deep learning intent models. You don't have to deal with the natural language understanding, the decisioning, the natural language generation. All of that is the means to the end, which is have a digital team member. This new application that's my robo SDR, my robo inside salesperson, my robo, marketing assistant. And I think from our perspective, that equates to faster adoption.
It makes so much sense in terms of, okay, well, I already have teams that are structured this way. I have a marketing team, and I have some marketing people on there who are dealing with all of these inbound leads and trying to qualify them so they can hand them off to the sales team. And you have these inside, sales development representatives or inside sales folks before you get to probably your field sales folks. So are you saying that you guys have actual working agents that could fulfill a marketing role or an SDR role or an inside sales rep or even a finance person and say, hey, this bill is due? Is this basically what people can sort of turn on and start using?
Yeah, we have over 2,000 customers today,
Okay.
globally, across every vertical you can think of, that are deploying intelligent virtual assistants for marketing, sales, customer success, and finance use cases. Absolutely.
Now, are they replacing humans in these teams, or are they sort of joining those humans alongside those, working alongside those humans on those teams?
Yeah. I mean, it's a good ethical question, right? So, do you take digital team members and use them to cost reduce and replace? I think in the periods like COVID where you've right sized your business and there are empty seats, clearly we can fill those to keep the business momentum going at lower cost. But our do good, kind of culture and approach to how to use this technology really is supplementing. I mean, who couldn't use an assistant? Whether it's your virtual EA,
100%.
right?
Absolutely. Yeah,
So
for
think of
sure.
it as every major business function gets an assistant, and
Right.
it's not an EA. It's an assistant within your job function,
Right.
and you're going to hand some of the work that is really a digital burden. I
Right.
wouldn't want to call it a menial task. I wouldn't want to characterize that virtual assistants just work on the really crappy jobs. But I do think that your virtual team members, your digital team members, will work on the jobs that require scale. That you just can't ramp up. And for companies that are growing, they'll add two humans, add a digital team member, and you'll get leverage. And then the human workforce will have quality, discussions with buyer prospects, quality discussions with existing customers. I mean, think about any customer outcomes manager, any customer success manager, and the number of touches they have with the existing customer base. If you could have all your meetings scheduled, all your NPS surveys, the follow up pre renewal done ahead of time with your virtual team member in customer success, and then you, as the human customer success manager, can have a dialogue live with your customer base. So much more meaningful time, value time, right? So I think the combination of an augmented workforce, a combination of digital with human in an augmented workforce, to me, is a ideal steady state. And I do think that come maybe a year to 2 years, we'll have an inflection point where every medium and enterprise sized business is going to go, okay, this is a must have.
I can imagine how great it would be, having been on the inside, both on inside sales and field sales, to have an assistant, a functional assistant, as you said, that understands what the task is, what we're trying to do, how we're trying to filter these inbound, let's say, marketing qualified leads down to and stack rank them, prioritize them, and then work them through the process. You mentioned BANT. Some people might not be familiar with that, but there are kind of critical steps along this path, like understanding, hey, does this customer have an actual budget? Do they have authority? Is there a real need? And is there a timeline? Are they going to do something in the next 3 months or 6 months? Even just working folks through those and touching every single one of those customers. I mean, I can say that absolutely there have been times where I looked at the list and went, I'm never going to get to these people. I'm never going to be able to have this conversation. So I think having a functional assistant in whichever role you are, marketing or SDR or inside sales, would be absolutely huge. I'm guessing this isn't at the point where it's going to be doing high touch, complex, multi-buyer type like field sales work, right? Because that's with the customer, that's presenting, it's doing conferences, things like that. So we're
Yeah.
not there yet, right?
We're not there yet. No, I think, and again, I don't know if you want to get there. I
Right.
think,
That's
I
the stuff
think,
that probably humans, it should be reserved for the humans.
yeah. I mean, I think that's
Yeah.
what you want to try to. You want to carve out all the time that's wasted. That these
Right.
these high quality, high value salespeople you don't need to be spending their time in a lot of menial tasks trying to schedule appointments and get things going with very simple questions and back and forth dialogue, but they can have the meaningful, well, let's talk about what you're, be more consultative, more of a challenger sales, model requires a really good understanding of the business. And there's got to be some, I think really high value touch. And I think that's worth investing in folks in those roles. But if you dilute that with a lot of the kind of, call it the preliminary work, you really are, I think, leaving money on the table. And I think the digital workforce augmented with the human workforce can really be a kind of an incredible combination. And if you think about the use cases, so someone needs to come to a webinar that you've hosted. How do you get all the folks in your potential customer base to attend that webinar? Do you want your human workforce to work on that, or do you let the virtual assistant that has unlimited bandwidth and the ability to reach out in a customized fashion to really field the opportunities for you and work it and get the folks to come to the webinar? And then the humans have the webinar. So, the value is there.
Right.
And then the follow-up after the webinar, do you really need to have your marketing and sales teams follow up after webinars when the virtual assistants can do so? And then, as you kind of mature interest, then you pass it back, and I think you could keep going back and forth between your digital team member and your existing human team members in a productive way, all the way through the life cycle. So
I was just going to ask that. So would there be a situation where essentially, let's say the marketing virtual agent is then handing off to an internal marketing person who maybe has to get involved, and then they could hand it off to the sales team? Or would the marketing virtual assistant just be able to do the handoff directly?
Our use cases today, the marketing assistant, the virtual assistant, hands off straight to the sales development rep. But in many cases, our sales development reps are also virtual assistants. And so you can have a IVA, intelligent virtual assistant, hand off to another virtual assistant, definitely. It just depends on, again, who's adopting, right? So we could be first adopted into marketing only, and then it's all in that kind of, early inbound to qualify into a marketing qualified lead. Could be all that, demand generation activity around, virtual webinars and what have you, but the sales and the rest of the organization hasn't bought in. And so, boom, you hand off to the human. But for sales and marketing teams, okay, we're getting really good leads coming from you guys in the marketing department. What are you doing? Well, we've got Rachel and Thomas working those, these new inbound leads. And they go, well, I have to meet Rachel and Thomas. Well, they're virtual assistants. And they're like, virtual assistants? Tell me more. And so, then that kind of moves into the sales, category where, you've got your sales development reps. And that's not an easy job. Sales development reps, especially in times now where,
not at all.
You've got a lot of, as a prospect buyer, you're saturated, I think with SDRs reaching out to you. So can you automate that process, and can you make it much more high quality in the sense that it's repeatable? You're putting the best practices of the conversation again into the virtual assistant. And then when something gets a little more matured, you kick it over to an SDR team that then can interact with you live, provide you some demos, get you interested and go, hey, you're qualified. Let me give you to a sales, account executive. And again, virtual assistant to SDR human to sales human. We could even see potential use cases in our customer base where our virtual SDR hands it not to a human SDR, but the prospect buyer says, I really like your product. Can I talk to a salesperson? I want to talk about pricing. Well, then our virtual assistant goes, I don't need to hand it to a human SDR. This person wants to buy. They've asked for pricing. I'm going to give it straight to the AE. So I think the virtual assistant handoffs can differ depending on what the intent is of the prospect buyer.
It's hard to believe this exists. This sounds like science fiction, but I know that when I first reached out to you and we hadn't been in touch for a long time, and I downloaded some things from the website, I started getting contacted by one of your, I guess, marketing assistants, and she was very persistent. And then you and I talked, and you said, "Yeah, that's actually one of our one of our
Yeah,
virtual
we
agents."
we, we
She was
drink our own.
extremely persistent, and every email was absolutely unique. It was super cool.
Yeah, we're definitely drinking our own champagne. That is for sure. And I think we've got over a dozen virtual assistants across our customer touch. And it's really fun to see a lot of the brands that we engage with, again, from small business to very large enterprises, take advantage of it. I do think, we're not seeing this obviously everywhere we bump into a digital property, frankly, because it is an emerging. Most of the virtual assistant use cases, again, were born in IT help desk and customer support. And I think the sales, marketing, and even kind of commerce driven conversational AI use cases are ones that are going to emerge. And it's, again, when you think about the market opportunity, to impact revenue, I think I want to help the CEO and the sales leaders, exceed their sales quotas, get beyond their quarterly targets, for Wall Street. And I think watching some of the biggest brands on the planet really buy into this has been exciting. We've seen, like for example, we've seen one of the largest learning companies in the world that does over 5 billion in revenue use virtual assistants to drive enrollment, for academic partners of theirs. Basically match the right student to the right university programs using virtual assistants. It's phenomenal. And
Hmm.
that we call that the admissions virtual assistant. I was looking at, just amazingly looking at the amount of use cases that have been applied for one of our largest tech companies in the world. They do about 40 billion in annual revenue, and they have used virtual assistants for pre-event registration to their before physical trade shows, but now virtual trade shows, to engaging retired or old leads, people that had come in through many of their product offerings and just not been re-engaged, to those that have come in and through content syndication or a webinar or software download, follow-up, that we just described. And then even those that are targeted. So they use virtual assistants to go after a targeted account list with, account-based marketing, coupled with good data, that they augment to understand who they're going after. And then they use the
Right.
virtual assistant, to take that information and have a really customized conversation with a prospect that they've targeted, which is very high value. So that's almost a human sales campaign. And I've seen virtual assistants applied to get the pipeline progression, basically get those opportunities to become real. And you would be amazed. This particular high tech company has moved from a 10% close rate for their sales team to, when they're applying these virtual assistants in these use cases, to over a 40% close rate. And if you
That's
think about it,
staggering.
it is, and it's real money, right? We're helping the company print money in a lot, in a way
That's
that's
ridiculous.
meaningful.
A 4x
4x,
improvement in close rate?
4x improvement in close rate. And if you think about it, it's because when a salesperson gets the opportunity, if the virtual assistant has gotten a hand raiser who said, yes, I want to talk to a salesperson, I want pricing, I'm interested in this product, versus your previously qualified leads that they didn't get to that point. Salespeople are just working on hot leads, really meaningful leads. And of course, they're going to close them at a higher close rate.
Right.
And then we've seen use cases in the same high tech giant, where they've had people using existing products and the utilization has dropped. And once the utilization drops to a certain point, the IVA kicks in. Intelligent Virtual Assistant reaches out and tries to understand why the product usage is low. And that's kind of that customer success manager use case. And so you'd be amazed on the returns that companies get for automating. I think we see for like every dollar you spend, you can generate as much as $176 in pipeline opportunity. In that large education use case, for every dollar they spend, they were making $10 in revenue. So a 10x ROI.
Seems like kind of a
Amazing.
no-brainer.
Yeah. Well, again, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, right?
Of course,
Being
you're the
part of this.
CEO. You're supposed to be pitching the story. But I mean, if these are real customer successes and real numbers, I mean, they're shocking.
It is, and it is on average a lot of folks coming to us with low lead coverage, and again getting 100% lead coverage, low sales conversion rates, improving those conversion rates, low expansion rates, improving those expansion rates, and even the virtual assistants, in times like this where collections are tough, helping on getting that cash in the door, and working with folks that are struggling to make their payments. So I think a lot of good application to accelerating revenue for sure.
Incredible. So one of the things I think people will probably ask, and honestly, I asked this, I think on the call that I had with you, I said, so I know you're running an intelligent virtual agent company, and one of your team members reached out to me. Was she an agent or was she a human being? Right. It was a she name. And you said, no, that was actually one of our agents. And we talked about that already. In terms of transparency, right? There's a lot of discussion around AI and ethics and kind of responsibility, things like that. To what degree is a customer sort of mandated to disclose upfront that you are interacting with one of these intelligent virtual agents or not? Do you just kind of leave it up to the customer? Is that a geographic thing? Is it different in different countries?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we do have a packaged approach to onboarding every one of our clients, and part of that is picking out the persona. I think whether it's female or male, the name, really is determined by obviously geography, the language. We'll support any language in the markets we serve, and I think the idea is to really definitely give it a human-like persona. Going beyond that, we'll even educate our clients on making sure we've got diversity inclusion considerations. So don't always pick a name that's very common or default to a gender, but come up with what is your diversity kind of pillars within your company, and we'll help educate and provide best practices around that. But then all that being said, you've picked your persona. Do you put down at the signature line, I am an AI, intelligent virtual assistant, or do you just leave that off and there's a phone number and an email and go?
Right.
We obviously don't dictate any of that. I think the ethics of it, is still being debated.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly it's up to you as a business whether you want to declare that or disclose that. We're not going to, think you're not a do good company if you decide not to disclose. And I think there are plenty of use cases. Even today we still get these through our customer success. Customer success managers will tell us that clients in the conversations have asked to meet the virtual assistant when they come into the storefront, right? So, and then we've heard that from our leadership at the clients that we get to talk to live. They're like, yeah, I got to tell you this situation where a client came in and they asked to meet with Rachel, our virtual assistant.
That's incredible.
So, yeah. So I think the thing is if you decide to not disclose, there is almost 100% chance that your client prospects will not know that it is an AI-based team member. And that's fundamentally because the technology has advanced so well. We measure and audit what our AI is able to do on a daily basis. Our perception of good is measured based on the AI's ability to interpret you and take the right next best action. Because if you have one of those mixed up, you misinterpret, take the right next best action based on the improper interpretation, doesn't matter, and vice versa. And so we've been able to get to a 98% level of accuracy, sustainable, against that combination, interpreting you and taking the next best action. So 2% of the time we're wrong. And so maybe that's the case where, the prospect goes, is this real? Am I really talking to a human or a virtual agent? But
Right.
98% of the time, I think they'll think, Rachel is real or Jason is real when they're not. They're obviously our virtual assistants.
Let's step way back and just talk about the market generally, right? There's a lot of kind of overlap. I think probably confusion is a better word around the markets and the sub-markets. And McKinsey has talked about the back office being worth sort of almost $10 trillion and the front office being what we're talking about being worth almost $6 trillion. And then there are these kind of sub-markets that people use different terms for: conversational AI, intelligent automation, intelligent virtual agents, chatbots. Do you have any sort of mental model you use for people to sort of understand, if those are the same or different, and if they overlap or they're converging? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think we see ourselves operating, in a category that has been described as intelligent virtual assistants. I think that is now becoming more commonly recognized by analysts and now also by our clients and client prospects. But I do see an umbrella that's larger than that. I do think that intelligent virtual assistants do fall underneath the intelligent automation umbrella. And, that does then include RPA in the back office as well as virtual assistants in the front office. And then, the chatbots are, to me, an evolution into that virtual assistant category as well. So I think ultimately, I think we would always engage our clients in making sure that they're looking for an intelligent virtual assistant experience, that more contextual, personalized interaction versus just a lead routing chatbot capability. I do think that the markets are going to consolidate. And so marketing based chat is going to become a channel. What we've seen in the web with chatbots has been extremely successful, whether it's mobile web or desktop web. But eventually, virtual assistants are going to displace that. And it's going to be your virtual assistant coming through the web, through an Alexa endpoint, through email, through SMS, through your WhatsApp. It doesn't matter where you are. You're going to talk to Rachel, and she's going to help you, with your upgrade for your wife's new cell phone. And you may start that conversation because you said, Alexa, please connect me to my, finish that sentence, whether it's AT&T, Verizon, or what have you. And then
Sure.
boom, you're talking to the virtual assistant for that service. And then you're done. You want to get into your car and you want to continue that conversation through, I think your mobile phone, through voice on, in your Tesla. And then when you get to the office, you might want to have an asynchronous conversation through email. To me, that's the natural kind of future state. And I do think that that will require some consolidation. The other key future, I think, state will also be that once you're finished with the sales agent and you become a customer, then the sales agent to customer success agent experience has to be natural. And that's going to require consolidation of use cases. And then eventually customer support. So, future state, I think virtual assistants will be offered across all the functional domains, and there will be suppliers that can cover all those functional domains. And so the intelligent virtual assistant category will be all consuming. And then RPA vendors and intelligent virtual assistant vendors may come together, and then you get an intelligent automation play across both front office and back office.
Right. And then in terms of kind of coming down to try to summarize all of this, basically we're looking at, it sounds like your focus has been kind of moving from the mid-market up into the enterprise market, right? And kind of going after the sort of $1 billion in revenue and larger customers. Is that
Correct.
accurate?
Correct.
And
And we've moved from sales assistant focus to marketing to customer success and finance. So we've we've kind of at the same time going from an SMB experience, um, you know, we've gone to mid-market and enterprise, which has forced us to consider that kind of holistic, broader, set of revenue touch points. And then verticals. We were born in a single vertical use case back in 2007, very focused on transportation. And now we're going across all verticals. So in the geographically, we were focused in North America. Now we're global. Originally, we were very focused on direct sales, and now we're really investing in indirect with partners. So natural evolution, I think, for us.
And in terms of just kind of summarizing the customers and where they stand, it sounds like for the most part, they have maybe some waste in the marketing and sales processes. They are maybe not getting full lead coverage, as you said, maybe not putting their people on the highest, using their people in the highest best use, probably putting them on the best leads with the best customers or customer prospects. And they're finding that if they have this deluge of information from the automation they did the last couple of years, and then the humans can't handle that they can kind of insert this AI filter in the way that can work with all of those customers, have those conversations, and then hand off the most qualified ones to the human teams to sort of drive the business. And so to me, that sounds like it's kind of improving certainly the customer responsiveness, because I'm sure you, and I'm sure anybody listening has had the experience of you send in a request or you send in a contact us, and then 3 weeks later you get somebody who says, "Hey, I got your email. I was wondering how you're doing it." And you're like, "Wait, I don't even know what company this is. That was like a month ago."
Exactly.
So I think that, improving that responsiveness, reducing that cycle time, and helping nurture those leads more smoothly, that all seems like things that they're trying to do, and that you guys are essentially then saying, okay, we can provide you virtual team members to take care of all of that stuff. Is that accurate?
That is. And I think, again, you come back full circle. You've aligned your marketing and sales team. There's no more finger pointing.
Right.
That it's a really optimized process from initial, net new lead to a closed won opportunity. And I think our clients' marketing and sales teams are actually, they come together and they appreciate each other's challenges through our own workshops. And when we're telling them how the virtual assistants are going to help both of them, they learn about each other's existing processes and go, I didn't realize that's what you guys do. And so I think we have seen a great alignment between our marketing and sales organizations that we're serving. And it's fun to watch.
That's awesome. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of the time we have here, Jim. I want to let you get back to your day. What's the best way for people to reach out and connect either with you or with the company?
Yeah, thanks, Troy. I think I would just say, come to Conversica.com. One of our virtual assistants will be happy to help you. And
no humans?
Don't fret. Don't fret. Rachel will lead you straight to a human very quickly, assuming we can service you properly. But yeah, come to Conversica.com and we'll help you out. And I think, for anybody who's learning about Conversica, through this program, we'd be happy to, to give you a friendly discount as well. So, let us know for sure that, you've found us through Troy here. Really appreciate the opportunity to engage and teach, or give a little bit of insight to what we're doing, because I love this business. It is so cool. And so I hope some of you out there listening will also really enjoy what we're doing as well.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. I've been blown away by all the conversations we had leading up to doing the podcast today. I'm super glad that we're back in touch, because you and I have been in touch kind of on email and the web for probably over a decade. So it's really nice to sort of reconnect on all this. Jim, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been excellent, and I hope you have an awesome rest of the week.
Back at you, Troy. Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Cheers.
So that brings us to the end of today's Productive AI podcast with Jim Kaskade, who's the CEO of Conversica. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please check out the show notes for links to everything we discussed today. And thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you on the next episode.